Rewind the clock. Go back in time all the way to the year 2000. The Monday Night Wars between WCW and WWE was still raging. Fans were divided amongst the two companies. Some people watch both companies. And overall, one of these companies was bound to go under. Well, that ended up being the fate of World Championship Wrestling a year later. The company closed its doors. Many people over the years have speculated what caused the demise of WCW. Well, a lot of longtime fans like myself, we look back at the year 2000 as being an example of the worst year WCW had. No one was sure if the company was even going to be around the following day. The company was already losing the ratings war to WWE. The Monday Night Wars. Monday Night Raw was crushing Monday Night Nitro. Thunder was being crushed by SmackDown. And it remained really a question of whether or not WCW was even going to make it even further. Around that time, we had Eric Bischoff get removed from power. Vince Russo came along, was in charge of creative, the Powers That Be storyline. Guy came over from WWE, only to get removed a short time later. And then they make the questionable move at this point by putting Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo together on camera. They were going to relaunch WCW, strip people off their championships. Supposedly the younger talents were going to start getting pushes that the older has-beens were keeping them down and preventing them from getting. And on paper, it looked good. But when the idea came along, many people felt it was a horrible attempt. But the biggest thing about this, nobody bothered to look at the real troubles of putting Vince Russo with an Eric Bischoff. There was more wrong than just a creative way of thinking. These two were exact opposites for several years. And that's one of the reasons why this whole pairing did not work. Vince Russo with his Jerry Springer soap opera entertainment logic versus the longtime logic of Eric Bischoff that we needed to have more wrestling and less promos. We needed to have these older veterans kept at the top. This is why these two did not work well together. It was going to be a catastrophe when they were put on camera together. Not to mention, both of them were actually heels, excuse me, that fans were sick and tired of or didn't want to get behind. Eric Bischoff's best heel run was with the NWO Black and White. Vince Russo tried being the mysterious figure in the Powers That Be storyline. But then they tried to put these two back on camera, and these two obviously were just continuing what was really not working anymore with these two. Combine that we had two factions, the Millionaires Club and the New Blood, feuding. The older veterans versus the younger guys. And people could not get behind it. Then that whole thing quietly phased out. We started having more of these over-the-top moments. We had on paper, it looked good, Bill Goldberg heel turn, which ended up a couple months in being completely destroyed because of Bill Goldberg's real-life feelings that going out and destroying a cancer survivor in Hacksaw Jim Duggan, combined with the fact that Goldberg was going out and visiting kids who were sick in hospitals with cancer, only to have him go out there and destroy Hacksaw Jim Duggan, combined with the fact that Bill Goldberg was really not wanting to be a heel for very long. Despite ability-wise, the guy did a pretty good job. And they had him feud with Kevin Nash over Scott Hall's contract. Goldberg would then really kind of quietly transition to a babyface again after that point. You had Ernest the Cat Miller, who was getting power as the commissioner, despite we were led to believe that Bischoff and Russo ran the show. We had the hardcore division that, even though it was good, it was copied and pasted from WWE. You had a tag team division of teams that had a lot of potential. You had Chronic, you had the Perfect Event, you had the Filthy Animals, you had the Misfits in Action, you had all these teams, but yet the problem was for several years, many of these people were held down to the point where They couldn't really go as far in the tag team division that a WWE tag team division was already doing at that point. And it just came and went with idea coming and idea going, but they could not cement any term of long-term effect of why these ideas were just crashing right when they started to really kind of either take off or were about to be attempted. Combine that Bischoff and Russo were not getting along half the time. Every time when these two got into an argument and they couldn't agree to anything, somebody would have to be the tiebreaker, which I think it was Brad Siegel. And we had the Bash the Beach that came along. Nobody knew really what was going on with that. We saw what would happen with Hulk Hogan leaving with the belt the way he did. He walked out, put his foot on Jeff Jarrett. Jarrett got up and walked out of the ring. Russo throws the belt into the ring. We were led to believe that this was not part of the script. Russo came out later in the show with the microphone, cut a promo on Hulk Hogan. Then we had Booker T versus Jeff Jarrett in the main event. Despite on the 83 Weeks podcast years later, Bischoff had said that that was never part of the show. But when Bischoff and Hogan left and that whole thing with Russo happened, Hulk Hogan ended up suing WCW. And it only got worse from there. Creative control, veterans that were refusing to step down for the longest time, all these younger talents that even though they were starting to get more of a push, nobody could get really behind them the way that they could with WWE that was already being seen as a younger company. Fans were tuning away from WCW to watch Austin, Rock, Undertaker, Mick Foley, Ken Shamrock, Kane, Triple H, and so many others. Combined, the WCW was losing money yearly. And there's so many things that really went wrong in a combination with WCW. But the biggest thing that I think that speeds this whole thing up in their demise, putting Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo back together. Or together, I mean, that was really where the nail in the coffin finally happened. Go look at them on camera together. You could see visibly these two did not want to be around each other. And all these younger talents, I mean, like, they were held down a long time. Like, all these guys, they had a lot of talent. Lance Storm, Mike Awesome, Norman Smiley, so many of them. And the WCW was always having us believe that keeping the older vets at the top is what people wanted to see, even after fans began tuning away. They did some really disastrous ideas. I mean, a lot of people say the finger poke of doom really was what started all this when Kevin Nash lost to Hulk Hogan. And they swerved us, and Hulk Hogan was once again the leader of a heel faction, the NWO Wolfpack. Despite the fact is that Hulk Hogan was really seen as somebody who was kept at the top for many years, protected by Eric Bischoff. They brought in all these other people, Dennis Rodman, Karl Malone. And it was just a bunch of ideas that came and went that were just not relatable, especially by the fact is, here's another one, David Arquette winning the WCW championship. This idea that came right out of Vince Russo, this was crapped on to no end. This is being called one of the dumbest ideas in wrestling. Nothing against David Arquette, but that man was not a wrestler. Whoever came up with that also in support of Russo, I'll never know how many there were. It was a bad idea. And it just continued to sink WCW with all these lame ideas that, again, it looked good on paper, but it was a bad idea to attempt. And the company would end up going under. So many people were switching from babyface to heel, authority figures coming and going. By the end of 2000, heading into 2001, you could see the arenas were getting smaller. The matches were getting shorter. I mean, it was just a huge mess. And say what you will in the history books when it looks back at WCW. It's an example of too many ideas attempted at once, a combination of greed, a combination of people wanting to stay in their contracts and not lose their spots, people being thrown together that obviously had no chemistry together, that really ended up being enemies in real life, like Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo were. Younger talents held down for years, and when they finally get their chance to really shine, it was too late. WCW was a perfect example at the end of a company that had fallen into its own greed, fallen into its own batch of bad ideas, a fan base they didn't listen to sooner. And we know where it went. And a lot of people really throw their own ideas out there to what WCW really went under for. Such a great company at one point. A strong cruiserweight division, a great tag team division, excellent technical wrestlers, brawlers, you name it. They had a lot going. When Nitro was 3 hours, Thunder was a great show. Saturday Night was a great show. And it's sad to really see that company go the way it did. But it was a variety of factors. And it was one of the darkest times in wrestling. A lot of us didn't want to see that company go under, but, all good things must come to an end, I guess. What did you think destroyed WCW? Tell me in the comments section down below. Hit the subscribe button if you're brand new to the channel. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and I'm out of here.